Hello again. Thanks for watching. This is Total Growth Investing, where price growth is not enough. Dividend growth is not enough. We want to identify stocks, funds, and other investments that perform well in both of these measurements, because when we find them and buy them, we can beat the market over the long term. It is now mid-April of 2021. The last video I did was in November. A lot has happened over the last 6 months. Everything seems to be at an all-time high. Stocks, indexes, cryptocurrencies, everything is in the stratosphere. I've done a few live streams over the last few months, but most of my time has been working on the latest version of the TGI list, working my regular day job, and taking care of things at home. We have a huge building project for my condominium. Things have been busy. Let's talk about another stock that's high on my TGI ranked watch list. This one's Teradyne Incorporated. I started researching this stock back in November, but things got too busy for me to finish it until now. When I started researching Teradyne, it was near the top of the list. Now it's sitting at number 25. That's still high enough to feature, but there are a lot of other stocks that I want to get to, so I wanted to get this one finished. Teradyne was incorporated on September 23, 1960, by Alex d'Arbeloff and Nick DeWolf, two friends from MIT. They set up shop originally in a rented space above a hot dog stand in downtown Boston, Massachusetts. These were the days when electronic tinkering was new. The company's name, according to Nick DeWolf, had to have a D in it because both of their names started with that letter. Tera is the prefix for 10 to the 12th power, and dyne is a unit of force. To the founders, the name meant rolling a 15,000-ton boulder uphill. The primary focus of the company was, and still is, automatic testing equipment for electronics. They saw a need to test the new transistors that were being developed, and thus they saw a potential market opportunity. They sold their first logic-controlled diode tester via Raytheon in 1961. They spent the 1960s growing and then got a listing on the New York Stock Exchange in 1970. It only took 2 years for the company to be profitable. As usual, I spent some time downloading and reading their annual reports, going back to 1993. All of the reports that I found are available via IPFS, and I will link the CID in the description. I've updated the data for 2020, since that came out on February 22nd, and this video was so delayed. It's also almost time for the first quarterly report, which I believe they released on April 20th. Here is a chart of their net sales from 1989 through 2020. Every few years, they would acquire a company and add the net sales of that company to the sales record numbers. Or they would divest themselves of a company and subtract those sales from their previous history numbers. A single set of numbers on a single line didn't work because the reports would adjust the data, backdated to include revenue and sales results from the companies that they acquired, or to remove segments of business that they had spun away. I finally came up with a way to display that in a single chart by creating lines for each of the different combinations and then working with the average in the actual numbers. I wonder if that's similar to how real stock researchers do this. I wouldn't know because I'm not a registered financial advisor. I just make YouTube videos for fun. That's my disclaimer, by the way, in case you missed the hint. Quick sidetrack. Halfway through recording the audio segments for this video, Teradyne came up on the top of my update list, and it landed at number 15. It's just an example of how dynamic the total growth investing ranking system is. The evolution of Teradyne was constant. While reading the annual reports, I found that every few years they had reshuffled the deck of what they considered their core businesses to be. And they kept expanding their descriptions of each of their business product lines and sub-industries. Testing was always the foundation, but the company experimented over the years trying this or that type of product or service to see if they fit. You can see in this chart what I mean. This also corresponded to their steady acquisition and divestment of various businesses over the years. They also expanded the details of exactly what regions and countries they have done business in over the years. Before 2000, it was divided between within the United States and outside of the United States. Then they started getting specific, and you can see that as a ratio of their total business, the United States has been a smaller and smaller market segment. Here's another view of sales measured in dollars, not just percentage of the total. This combines the net sales data we looked at earlier with the regional data. Some interesting details here, with the massive investments made to prevent the Y2K disaster that was predicted, and we can see the drop in business during the 2008 Great Recession. It's nice to see that the update from the 2020 annual report brought them back to an all-time high, exceeding the spike they saw from Y2K when everyone was so worried about a 4-digit calendar year. So, what brought Teradyne near the top of the TGI ranking list? Let's go through the growth data and see. First, let's look at dividend growth. Teradyne started paying a dividend in 2014, and while the dividend itself started small at 6 cents per share, they have increased it slowly over the last 6 years. And while they have been increasing what they are paying, their revenue has actually been growing even faster, making their payout ratio go down over time. This means they have plenty of room to grow the dividend in the future. Their price return and total return have been spectacular over the last 5 years. It's well over the S&P, and from the graph it doesn't look like the COVID crash had any effect on their earnings. A semiconductor supply chain issue doesn't seem to affect whether those chips and boards need to be tested, because they do. However, this is where I need to hit the caution button. Fantastic growth like this is certainly what we want to see. But we also have to remember that we don't invest for yesterday or even today. We invest for tomorrow. Seeing the gains over the last 2 or 3 years really makes me wish that I had bought it back in 2016 or 2017, when it was floating at less than $40 per share. That's not the case now. And based on the valuations that I'm seeing on dividendstocks.cash, it looks overvalued. And more important for an investor, it doesn't look like the fair value numbers are going to be able to catch up within a reasonable time horizon. It might go higher, the earnings might catch up, and they may even exceed expectations. But it could also drop as the frenzy of the current stock market cools down or hits some kind of a bump. The volatility we've seen just since the turning of the year might be an indication of that, and I just can't see a good justification for putting $130 into something that might settle down to a more reasonable number over the next few months. We'll just have to see. One of the newest segments for Teradyne is industrial automation, something they kicked off by buying Universal Robots in 2015. These are not robots that work alone, but the ones that work in collaboration with humans, doing repetitive tasks to free us from extra labor and also minimizing mistakes. They are designing robotic systems that can be shown how to do a task without the end user needing to learn complex programming languages. In the press release about the acquisition, the collaborative robotics segments is described as growing by 50% per year. Universal Robots was one of the leaders, and that makes Teradyne one of the leaders today. The U.S. President is focused on infrastructure, and his administration is looking beyond roads and bridges into what the word infrastructure really means for the 21st century. One of the primary targets is access to data, access to the rest of the world, and keeping the U.S. at the forefront of the technological development wave. The semiconductor industry is critical to that, and testing the new technology so manufacturers and end users can be certain that what they are buying that says Made in the USA means they are buying quality products. That's always going to be considered important. Teradyne is one of the biggest players. They have had fantastic growth, and while the price is high, they might continue that growth going forward. Let me know in the comments what you have heard about this company and if you have it in your portfolio. I'd be interested to hear from you. Thanks for watching. As always, if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Things have calmed down enough at home that I'm hoping to get back to making these videos on a regular basis. Please also like the Facebook page, and if you'd like to talk about the TGI ranking system and the stocks at the top, please feel free to join the Facebook group. I know there are other social media sites out there, but one step at a time. I'm not close to monetization, and I do these videos for fun, not profit. The profit comes from making good choices in investing and watching the returns roll in. Let's beat the market.